Happy Monday, folks, and welcome back to WWE Network and Chill, where every single Monday I, Graham G.S. Matthews, break down all the content I watch on the WWE Network. Just yesterday, all new episode of the show was uploaded here to the channel. Be sure to check it out, my review of the Table for 3 edition with The Shield. Great friggin' episode. So what are we doing going forward? It seems like the WWE Network, unlike when Total Divas was airing, which I also talked about here on the channel. Cheap plug, check out my entire Season 2 review right here on WWE Network and Chill. There's going to be new content going up on the network every week after Raw now, whether it be Ride Along or Table for 3 or new WWE 24. So I'll be talking about it still, in addition to Total Divas. Now, if I'll be watching Total Divas, I came to the conclusion I might as well just review it here on the show. So any WWE Network stuff I'll be talking about on Sunday, and although it's not currently on the network, it will be at some point. On Mondays, I'll be talking about Total Divas Season 7. So I already reviewed Season 1 of Total Divas right here on WWE Network and Chill about a year ago, so check that out if you haven't already. But nonetheless, Season 7 premiere of Total Divas from last Wednesday, so we'll talk about it here today, airing on the E! Network. They're probably going to re-air it before this week's episode at 8 o'clock Eastern at the same time as NXT, ahead of the new episode at 9. So this is what I did with the Season 1 review, where I broke it up into sections, because it seems like every Total Divas episode, there's like various stories being told. So as opposed to going back and forth with like what's going on and shit, I just broke it up into separate stories. And one of the stories was that it was announced on this episode that at Money in the Bank, there's going to be a women's Money in the Bank ladder match. So that kind of fills you in the timeline and where this is taking place. They don't reintroduce you to the characters that have already been, a part of the show for a long time. Like Natalya's been there since Season 1. She doesn't need a reintroduction for anyone who's been watching for the past 6 seasons. I think, Total Divas wrapped up after Birdie Joe was born in late April, right around WrestleMania 33 time. So they don't really waste much time before getting into Season 7 of Total Divas. This takes place, I think, in late May, if not early June. I think late May is when it begins. Total Divas, the Season 6 ended maybe in late 2016. I'm not 100% sure, but regardless, Natalya finds out there is a big announcement on the upcoming episode of SmackDown, and they speculate whether it is a women's Money in the Bank ladder match. Obviously, Shane confirms that on the show. Lana, she's not going to be a part of that match, but she does find out she's going to be getting a shot at the championship, the SmackDown Women's title, against Naomi at the Money in the Bank pay-per-view, and she's excited to start wrestling. And Lana was introduced to the Total Divas universe, the fan base, in Season 6. But yeah, she has not really wrestled up to this point. She had a one-off match, a debut match at WrestleMania 32 on the kickoff show, but beyond that, she really isn't much of a wrestler. But she is excited to start wrestling again, beginning with this bout with Naomi at Money in the Bank for the championship. And she trains with Natalya and Nikki. Her husband Rusev is there as well, making her doubt herself because he's not the greatest teacher, pretty much telling her that she sucks, which she does, to be honest with you. She doesn't have much experience, and he's just kind of doing Rusev. Rusev is just doing Rusev and criticizing Lana, as he should, because putting Lana back in the ring was never all that good of an idea in the first place. She's attractive, sure, but she was much better off as just the manager or a valet for Rusev. Meanwhile, Natalya is nervous for Money in the Bank in the same way that Lana is, but just because she's going to have to be dealing with ladders, not just a regular old match like Lana will be. She's competing in her first ever ladder match. So she asks her dad, Jim the Anvil Neidhart, for ladder match advice, and he kind of tells her to not freak out, but she's going to anyway. So she says that she needs to get familiar with ladders, and they bring a bunch of ladders to like some place where they go to train with them and stuff, and the ladders fall off the top of the car in typical Neidhart fashion, and she knows that she isn't ready. She's never been in a ladder match before. She knows right before the pay-per-view she's just not ready for this. She is not prepared for what's about to go down. Meanwhile, Nikki Bella hosts a party at her place with the new cast, or some members of the new cast. Now, who's there? Alexa Bliss is there. Bri isn't there, I don't think. Trinity might be there. I don't remember. There's just a few members of the cast that's there. Nikki, Lana, Alexa Bliss, and a few others. But she basically fills them in that while Daniel Bryan, which I'll talk about momentarily, while he's out on maternity leave with Brie Bella soon after Birdie Joe was born, that she pitched the idea to become the SmackDown GM, or an interim GM, or a proxy, Daniel Bryan's proxy, whatever. and she thought that'd be a good idea, so Bryan could get more time at home with Birdie Joe, so he wouldn't have to go back. And that didn't really fly with the creative team. We don't find out exactly why it doesn't happen, except for the fact that she says that they told her it doesn't make sense right now, which I understand, because Daniel Bryan was due back at some point anyway before SummerSlam, and she wanted to go back between, at that point, which might have been late May, early June, and SummerSlam, which for 9 shows doesn't really make too much sense. So that's why they turned down the idea, whether it's an idea that's still going to be floated by this time in a few months, this time next year, at whatever point when Daniel Bryan's gone from the company, who knows, depending on whether Nikki wrestles again. I wouldn't think so. I mean, you never know. The only reason it fell through here was because she didn't pitch it right after WrestleMania, and had she done that, and she could have been Daniel Bryan's interim GM for a few months, maybe there was a better shot of it happening. But because there really wasn't much time left before SummerSlam, it really didn't make much sense, which I understand. But thank God we dodged the bullet there. I'm sure Nikki Bella would be a fine authority figure, but Daniel Bryan is just infinitely better, and he obviously just could not care less about his job, so making his role on TV that much better. Anyway, so Money in the Bank arrives. Lana's still afraid of failing, and Natalya's afraid of falling up top of the ladder. And that's it for that side of the story. And Rusev admits that he's worried for Lana's well-being at the pay-per-view. So that's the stuff with Lana and Natalya and Nikki. So moving on to Trinity and John, who is essentially not John Cena, but rather Jimmy Uso and Naomi. She starts off by updating the viewers on what's been going on in the absence of the show, saying that things are going exceptional for her right now. She's the SmackDown Women's Champion. Jimmy Uso is one half of the SmackDown Tag Team Champions. She competed at WrestleMania. She's living at home right now. She's doing great. But she says that the romance department is not at its best. She doesn't want to cook because she feels entitled because she's a champion. And Jimmy Uso doesn't want to cook, so they go out to go get some food, and they almost bring their belts with them. And John Uso, or I'm just going to call him Jimmy Uso. Jimmy Uso's apparently is not waterproof, so he does not bring his belt. I'm not sure if Naomi did, or Trinity, whatever. And they arrive at the drive-thru, and Trinity says that she's bored there in Pensacola, Florida. I think is where they emanate, where they live. She's not too happy with the way they're doing stuff, and they're not having too much fun. So, Jimmy Uso takes Trinity on a trip to a lighthouse, or something like that, and he basically wants to have sex while he's there, being the horny Uso that he is, and she says no, and it gets all crazy and shit, but this is not enough for Trinity. It's not enough for her in order to fulfill that boredom that's in her heart from Pensacola, Florida. He makes dinner for her, and she finds out that it was just takeout, and she appreciates that he always tries, but she finds that it was takeout and forgives him anyway. So that's essentially it from Trinity and John Uso. We move on to Bri, and that she's happy that Birdie Joe is obviously born. We got to cover that in the season finale of Total Bellas. And she's also happy that Bryan got maternity leave from WWE, so he's been home for the last few months, during the first few months of birth with Birdie Joe and Bri. Nikki visits, and like I said, she pitched the idea to Bryan to take his spot while he was gone. But soon enough, Bryan got the call to go back. He doesn't want to go back. Bri doesn't want him to go back, but he has to. And she doesn't know if she can do it alone. And that's all we really see from Bri, Bryan, Nikki, and Birdie Joe on this episode. And our final story, which might be the most ridiculous story and a fitting way to kick off Total Divas, just to show how scripted the show really is. So we catch up with Maryse, who was introduced to the Total Divas universe in Season 6, the prior season. So she talks about her move to Raw and how she's basically starting over again and getting used to the new women's roster, and she's working with women on Raw that she wasn't working with on SmackDown. She says that, where am I here in my notes? We also get an introduction to Alexa Bliss, who is debuting on the Season 7 of Total Divas, the 7th season of the show. We get to know her a little bit about her background, and Nia Jax as well. Our first time looking at Nia Jax on Total Divas. We get a bit of a introduction to her and her background in wrestling, how she arrived where she's at this point in the show. Maryse talks about, like I said, the different dynamic on being on a new show, and she says to Nia Jax that she has wrestled every woman on the roster, which is preposterous because she hasn't. I mean, obviously, recently she's been a manager, but even before that, I mean, she's wrestled every woman on the roster. I don't ever remember her getting in the ring with Bayley, Sasha Banks, Charlotte, Becky Lynch, and the list goes on and on, but that was a bit ridiculous. So while Maurice is getting, this is where it gets really stupid. So while Maurice is getting makeup on her face, she's getting makeup done for the show, Nia Jax asks her if, or she had said something else about, like, have you ever done this? Or, you know, what does it feel like to not be a part of the women's revolution now that you're not wrestling anymore? And Maurice took that as a shot, which it obviously was not. Nia was just being genuine and asking her, like, what it's like to be on a new show. She might have phrased it a bit better, but this is where things got ridiculous. So after Maurice got heated about that, Nia asks Maurice if she's ever been in a gauntlet match before. Because Nia was really worried about competing in the one that she was about to that night. And Maurice just goes off on her, like, why are you asking me? Why I don't know what a gauntlet match is? Of course I've been in the gauntlet match. Why don't you know this? It's like, I don't even remember Maurice being in a gauntlet match, and I'm a freaking giant-ass wrestling fan, you know? Like, not everyone knows Maurice's back history, and she hasn't wrestled in close to freaking 6 or 7 years, so I'm not sure why she would have taken that as a shot. And her ego is on a way different level, and I'm not a huge Nia Jax fan as a wrestler, but as a person, she seems like a sweetheart. So I don't know why Maurice really took that as a shot. And so, like I said, Maurice just goes off. Alexa Bliss is stuck in the middle of this. She talks it over with Nia, and she's like, you know, you don't really have much of a filter, and you really say what you feel, whatever, and you should probably just be more sensitive to the veterans. And Nia feels that way. She learns to be more sensitive to the veterans and watch what she says, which she was never in the wrong to begin with. Like, you have to see this in order to believe how ridiculous this is. She asks her literally, have you ever been in a gauntlet match before? She never asked her if she's ever wrestled a match, which I would understand if, you know, taking offense by that. She literally asked her if she's ever been in a gauntlet match, which during Maurice's time, there weren't many women's gauntlet matches in WWE. I don't even think Maurice has been in a freaking gauntlet match. So her taking offense to that is so stupid. It was so dumb. So dumb. And I love Maurice, but that was really, really dumb. So Maurice talked to Miz about it, got Miz's opinion, and obviously he's going to back up his wife. Why wouldn't he? And she feels that all the up-and-coming women need to know their history, and they need to know what's going on, and know what's going on before they ask questions or make assumptions and blah, 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 which is so fucking ridiculous. But anyway, that was really dumb. And that was like the main selling point of this episode was the fight between Nia Jax and Maurice. But again, it was so blown out of proportion, and I'm so on Nia Jax's side with this because that seems so friggin' ridiculous. But beyond that, it was a good episode. Season 7 kickoff of Total Divas. I still say I put season 8, but I'm pretty sure it's season 7. Anyway, whatever season it is, I'm pretty sure it's season 7. I thought the prior season was a bit better. I thought it was more stacked. I thought Renee Young was great on that show. And Paige and Eva Marie were obviously replaced too with Alexa Bliss, Nia, and Carmella, who was not on this episode. So I'm glad they didn't try to introduce her because there's so much else going on. They have such a giant cast. I'm glad they didn't try to fit her in here, and they'll probably get to her next week. But a lot of different stories told with Maurice and Nia. You had Bri being a new mom, Trinity and John. You have Natalya and Money in the Bank, Lana and Rusev. So Nikki also too. So a lot of different stories. One too many stories, I would argue, but still a solid start to Season 7 of Total Divas. That being said, guys, thank you for checking out my review. This episode was called This is Make or Break. So check out This is Make or Break on the E! Network. I believe it'll be replayed this coming Wednesday before the new episode airs at 9 o'clock at 8. You can check out this episode airing again if you haven't already checked it out. So be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content from yours truly. And until next week, obviously, like I said, we'll be talking about episode 2 of season 7 of Total Divas next week. Until then, enjoy all the other content going up on the channel. If there's anything airing on the WWE Network after Raw tonight, then I'll talk about that on Sunday on WWE Network and Chill. Until then, guys, be well, stay safe, have an awesome rest of your week. I'm Graham GSM Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.